Yo, 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 welcome back to Brandon Smooth TV. Back at you with another review. We got House of the Dragon, the Game of Thrones prequel on HBO Max. And just some quick background information. I didn't watch Game of Thrones when it initially came out. I actually binged it during Christmas break last year. So, as far as the series is concerned, it's definitely fresh in my mind. And going into this show was just super smooth transition. Um, for the characters, in the top left hand corner, we'll start and go over. We have Rhaenyra Targaryen. She's the king's daughter. Um, we have next to her Damon Targaryen, who is the king's brother. And then we have the acting king who's active right now. We're kind of going over his reign, Viserys Targaryen. Now, underneath him, the gentleman with the locks to the left is Corlys Valerian. He's the king of the seas, and he is Rhaenys' husband, who's right underneath him. She was the queen who never was. And then to the right of him in the green, we have Alicent Hightower. She's actually the king's hand's daughter. And right next to him, next to her is her father, Otto Hightower, who is the king's hand. Basically, the king's right hand man. Anything that needs to be done in the kingdom, of course, they are in charge of it, like a vice president. Going to the bottom row, as I mentioned, that's Rhaenys. She's the queen who never was, and the reason they call her that is because when the reigning king was choosing, it was between her and it was between your boy in the top, Viserys Targaryen. You know how biased they were against women back in those days, and it was definitely a patriarchy. So, of course, they chose the men, and that is something that they deal with this entire series. Next to her is the knight Christian, and then to the very bottom in the right-hand corner, I don't know her name, but that's Damon Targaryen's wench, who he ends up taking up as a wife. We'll get into that later. So episode 1 takes place, this is about 200 years before Game of Thrones. And the episode starts off seeing Syrax. Syrax is Rhaenyra's dragon. I'm going to call her Ray Ray. In Dragonstone, they kind of show King's Landing and they show Dragonstone where they keep the dragons in the dragon pit and stuff. Well, no, the dragon pit is in King's Landing. So yeah, they show the dragon pit and they basically show a beautiful scene of the dragons flying over the city. I think they got better with the dragons as far as the CG is concerned too, and of course more money. Now we end up finding out that the king's wife is actually pregnant, and they're waiting for his son to be born. He knows in his heart, he said he's had dreams that he's going to have a male heir, even though he does have Rhaenyra, who is his oldest daughter, but he needs a male heir. Now, Damon Targaryen, his intro sitting in the Iron Throne was perfect foreshadowing for his character overall. Of course, he feels like he should be next in line since currently he only has his niece, Ray Ray, who's a girl, and he said he should be next in line to sit on the Iron Throne, being the king's brother. Um, they have some type of weird relationship too in this scene. He got a weird relationship with his niece. He gives her a gift, but you can tell they're obviously close. And you can tell she kind of watches his back and he watches hers because the guard that's in charge of watching her right hand dude that's basically in charge of her knight, kind of had an issue with him sitting in the Iron Throne. He's like, hey, what the fuck? And she's like, hey, chill out, that's my uncle. So, weird relationship. I caught that. Now, Allison, who we see in the green, and Ray Ray, they're like sisters. And what happens in the series, in this picture, of course, we're seeing the adult actresses play them. But they are played great as far as these last 2 episodes I've seen by child actors. They do an awesome job, teenage actors. And they're basically like sisters. They grow up together. They obviously have a cool bond. They're studying together. Their families are definitely close, with her father being the king's right hand, the king's hand. So it's going to be fun seeing how their relationship grows throughout the series. Damon is the head of the Night Watch appointed by the king. And we really get to see who Damon Targaryen is in this first fucking scene. Because his scene when he comes in with the City Watch to bring justice to the city was fucking insane. These motherfuckers came through, start beating people, tackling motherfuckers, chopping off arms, called a dude a rapist, took his pants down, and chopped his shit off, clean off like blade, and then just threw it up on the table like it wasn't shit. Damon doesn't mind getting his hands dirty either. You can see him hitting people and slicing heads off. He actually lives for that gore, and he loves that part of his job. You can tell. He basks in it. So we know who he is. Basically, he's a very, very strong-willed individual. Does what he wants when he wants. And that shit was gruesome. That brought me back and said, welcome to Game of Thrones. When I seen that scene, you're back. Now, they do have some back and forth once the king actually confronts him about what happened and him just going through bludgeoning people and shit. And you can tell that Hightower and Damon, they do have some type of beef. They both see each other for who they are. I believe that Damon sees Hightower as an opportunist who's basically wooing the king to do his will and wooing the king to do what he wants to do, almost like a Dick Cheney, George Bush situation. And then, of course, Hightower sees Damon as just a crazy, psychotic, power-hungry little brother that wants the throne. So, however their little beef goes, that shit is not going to end well. I can tell you that right now. Now, in light of his son being born, he has a big tournament, jousting tournament, and I love the jousting in this. This was a good scene. It showed Damon also participating in the games and him getting knocked off his horse by your boy on the bottom, Sir Christian. That beef ain't gonna be over either, and I can definitely see them going back and forth. But Damon cheated like a motherfucker. You supposed to joust and hit somebody in the chest to knock him off their horse. This fool gonna take his goddamn lance and hit the horse in the legs. Now that's cheating. You should have got disqualified or at least lost 2 points. That's a technical foul. Okay? That's a tech. But it shows Damon would do anything to win, in my opinion. Now, we fast forward, and the king did have a scene with his wife. We was talking to her, talking about giving childbirth. Obviously, she's older, and they did explain that she's had multiple miscarriages. So this baby was already in jeopardy, but he believes it's going to be a boy. He believes everything's going to be okay. But then the Meisters come, and they basically, the wise men, the doctors, they study the academia part of the country, and of course they are like doctors. So they basically say, look, you're not going to be able to save your wife and the kid. Either way, your wife's gone, but it is a chance to save the kid. So basically, she has to get a C-section, and back then, they didn't have no way to save them. Wasn't no epidurals for the pain, wasn't none of that shit. Okay? So, the birthing scene, that shit was gruesome, y'all. Because he didn't tell her. They just pulled up and everybody held her arms and legs, and then they just sliced her goddamn vertically and yanked the baby out. She bled out and died giving birth. This was a real gruesome scene. Her screaming. The actress did a great job, and him sitting there having to hold her hand the whole time while basically she's murdered to save the kid. And she died giving birth. And then his son was born. His son was actually born. Now, the baby only lived for a day, and the son ended up dying, but the baby was brief to start off with. Like the doctor said, look, it is a chance to save the kid, but the kid was born only lived for a day. Fast forward to the funeral scene, and it was very sad because they had to bury the wife. Of course, Ray, her mother, was the one getting buried, and the king couldn't even order the dragon to command him to do the cremation. So, of course, the daughter finally mustered up the strength, even though her mother died, said Dracarys. And, of course, the dragon cremated the queen's body. Probably in Targaryen tradition, I assume. I mean, they are the fire squad, the fire fam. So that would make sense. I did like this scene also because it does show that Damon does have a heart. And you do need to point these scenes out with somebody who's going to be very vicious in the show. Because he did tell his niece, look, your dad's going to need you. He's going to need you more than ever. So make sure, you console him and have his back, right? But the king still needed an heir. Now, Damon goes back to his brothel. He's basically celebrating because the only male heir is dead. And he called his nephew, who just died, ain't even fresh in the grave, the heir for a day. That is super, super fucked up if y'all think about it. The heir for a day. Um, Now, Otto Hightower, he always had some weird. I can tell he reminds me of Littlefinger in the Game of Thrones series a little bit because he has some ulterior motives. You know, he wants power, and he's very subtle the way he do it. I ain't seen him really get too hype in these first couple episodes, but he sent his goddamn daughter to the king's chamber. Big pimpin', spin the cheese. He be big pimpin' on BLADs. He be big pimpin'. Because why are you doing this? And you can tell she kind of don't want to go, but she understands the order of things. And her being a woman, so he's sending the king while he's grieving. He gonna send his own daughter to the chambers to kind of console him. They say, quote unquote. We'll see how that ends up. Now, the series finally went hard at the end. The first time you see him get some nuts. And he's saying, look, you clowning, my wife just died. You clowning my son, calling him heir for a day. And then Damon finally just comes out and says, look, brother, you weak. You a weak king. The kingdom needs to be ran with an iron fist. You sitting up here trying to be friends with everybody and the shit's not working out. Meanwhile, we got vandals running through the city. And we got little small factions actually gathering up throughout the kingdom that could potentially overthrow us. So he sent Damon back to his wife, back home. And then he named his daughter at the end of the episode as his next heir to the Iron Throne, which we know is Rhaenyra's Ray. And that's going to be crazy because it's going to cause a lot of rifts in the kingdom, especially a woman being named the heir to the Iron Throne. Obviously, with all the shit we just talked about with male heirs. Last but not least, I did enjoy the speech they finally had because they barely spoke two words to each other. Young Ray and King Daenerys, King V. The speech about the dragons, basically saying, he said, look, this is a power the men should have never trifled with. We should have never did this black magic. Basically sold our souls to have these incredible, crazy-ass beasts like nuclear warheads. And then he basically talked about the dream that his forefather had, Aegon. It was called the Song of Ice and Fire, and this was about the White Walkers that we see in the Game of Thrones series 200 years later. Overall, this was the first time, probably, I wouldn't say this year, but this set up the show well, as far as the first episode. It established the characters, it showed their motivations, and basically, it set it up to see how the series is going to be. They didn't overdo nothing. They didn't underdo nothing. I thought it was a great first episode. Great acting. Great writing. Great dialogue. And of course, the CG looked good on the dragons. I'm ready to see some more shit set off. Fast forward to episode 2. Starts off with the scene with the Crab King. This was also very gruesome. Because the Crab King, I don't know if he controls the crabs or what. But basically, he has these people in these little islands he took over. They're eating human flesh and picking it off piece by piece, and people are screaming in agonizing pain. I like they're not showing too much of this villain, but we're getting little glimpses. And when they finally go up the heads with this dude, he already looks crazy. He looks like he should be in Slipknot because he got some type of crab meat or leather or something over his face. Leather face. He looked like a Slipknot member. So I'm ready to see how hard he go and what exactly he's doing. Now, this episode really brings up the king of the Valerians, Lord Corlys, and he wants the Crab King stopped, y'all. Reason being is ruining his business. All the shipping lanes, basically, that they have to go through to bring in goods are being conquered and taken over by this dude, probably like an island at a time. And if the shipping lanes, he explains, loses money, he loses money, and his family loses money. They are the wealthiest family in the kingdom and the most powerful as far as wealth under the king. And I feel him. Shit. He's like, look, this is ruining my money. We need to go do something. The king's like, well, I sent some mercenaries out there, missionaries, to go chop it up with them. We're going to see what's going on. And everything's going to be fine. He's like, no, everything's not going to be fine. We need to get these dudes out here and take them out by force. So I understand his position. Hightower's ass is going to tell him, look, just because you sit at the king's table don't necessarily mean you the king. And Lord Corlys, you can definitely tell he wants power. Also, everybody's fighting for power. I don't know if he necessarily want to sit on the Iron Throne, but since his wife is Nisi, the queen who never was, I can understand their family's motivation. They are the wealthiest family, and having one of their people sit on the Iron Throne would naturally make sense, and it'll also kind of make amends for her getting passed over. And now her niece, or her, would that be her niece, niece, her cousin, Ray Ray, we know she is the one that was named the next heir, so I can see their motivation. Speaking of Ray Ray, she want to ride on some foods. You know, they talking about how they gonna stop the Crab King, and she's like, look, Dad, we got dragons. We fucking have dragons. Send me and a couple of the dudes over there and we'll clean this shit on up quick. And then the king gonna say it's not that easy. And then H-Town, Hightower's ass is gonna send her away. But you can tell Hightower sees her strength. And Hightower understands. Now from Hightower's trying to protect the kingdom too. You know, he don't want nothing to happen to the king. That is his job. You know, he is thinking, trying to think, you know, not with the war mind. He wants to be more diplomatic. But sometimes you got to burn some shit up. And these episodes are just creeping and getting closer and closer to that. So I'm happy to see that. But he does see her strength. And that's why he sent her away. Because he knew she was right. And even Corlys, Lord, our boy Corey, Lord C, he seen it. He was like, at least the princess got a goddamn plan. And I kind of feel him on that. So we'll see how that turns out. Now, Allie is manipulating Ray Ray just like her father. She's a lot like her father. And even though they are friends, you can tell she is kind of manipulating her. She knows that she's actually grieving over her mother's death. Her mother had also died. They off screen, they said it came up in a couple of lines. But Hightower's, H-Town, his wife died. And so they can kind of relate, you know, helping each other grieve. And they praying to the gods and stuff. Gonna tell her, don't worry about her father remarrying, because it is a push. It's been 6 months since the queen died. And they're like, look, you got to have more male heirs. So they're forcing, and everybody's pushing the king to get married, to remarry. Now, we do get an urgent alert. Hightower busts in the room and say, look, we need to have a small council. Some shit didn't happen. Our boy Damon, has took over Dragonstone. He's been living there. I'm taking over our ancestral home, as they said, and then he stole one of the dragon eggs. The king is pissed about this, of course, and the king's like, look, I'll go down there myself, pull him up out of this castle, get the egg back, and it'll be over. But Hightower stops him and says, look, you can't go, it's too dangerous. Your brother's unpredictable, and what we need to do, you need to just sit down and I'll go. So he decides to go and confront Day. Him and Day already got beef, so you can already probably tell how that's going to turn out. Now, Lord Corlys, Lord C, and Rhaenys, Nisi, they offer their 12-year-old daughter to marry the king. Yuck. But to keep the bloodline strong, from their perspective, unite the families together and kind of show the whole kingdom that they still got the power. I don't know what it is about this show. Maybe it was the times, but people love offering up their goddamn daughters. Hightower offered up his daughter. Lord Corlys is offering up his daughter. And it's weird. Especially in these times. The back of the day it might have been different, but no, that shit is some real pedo shit. I'm going to just keep it a buck. I don't know what to say. Also, this is another way, like I said, for their family to get somebody on the Iron Throne. But offering up your 12-year-old daughter is weird. And, they're just doing it for potential power. They're just power hungry. That's the reason they're doing it. So King V and Ray are trying to get close. They had their first conversation about her mother's death, and you can tell the king did love her. And I'm glad that they both can agree to that, at least, that they both, you know, love their lost sibling. Not sibling, but, you know, his wife and her mother. But the king is slowly falling apart, man. And we see his finger got cut on the Iron Throne in the first episode. It's already turned all the way black, and it looks like it's about to fall off. I love this. This is great symbolism, because as the kingdom is slowly rotting, so is his body. Remember on the first episode, I didn't go over that, but he had a little thing on his back. He keeps getting cut by the Iron Throne. I was watching what the creator said, and they said the Iron Throne is made that way on purpose, because you're never supposed to get too comfortable on it. And as his body's slowly deteriorating, the kingdom is slowly deteriorating. So great symbolism. The writer shouts out to y'all for doing that. And I'm waiting to see how he's gonna look at the end of his goddamn reign. Is that Iron Throne gonna have him all the way effed up? He's gonna probably even be barely able to walk. Now King V asked H-Town, should he remarry? He asked Hightower. I don't trust Hightower. He got an ulterior motive. And he basically said he should, but of course, they keep saying who he should marry, and it's Lord C's daughter, but they had to have a meeting. You know what I'm saying? They had to kind of walk through the gardens, and they had a meeting. So this meeting with a 12-year-old was cringe as fuck. And it's his relative because it's his cousin's daughter, so that'll make them cousins. It was just weird, and him walking with that little ass girl, and she looked like she just barely about to go to recess. She about to go to recess and go play with some Barbie dolls. That's how young this little girl was. So it was weird. That was just the weird ass scene. I don't know what else to say about that. The king finds out, as I mentioned before, they already know that Day stole the egg. So H-Town stops him. They go retrieve the egg. And before he leaves, he asks Allie, is she going to go to the king's chambers tonight? Big pimpin'. Sending my daughter. Yeah, we big pimpin'. I don't know why they doing that, but she about to go and get this nigga the Gok 3000. Was that his plan the whole time, to have his daughter slowly make her way into the king's bed? I think it was. It hasn't came out yet, but she's down to do it because he's following her father's instructions, but it's just weird. But yeah, she's going to give him that Gok. When you do that, you got a motherfucker's mind. Once she get the king's mind that she has his nuts in her hand, it's going to be over. She's basically going to be ruling the kingdom through Hightower, through them. Watch. Mark my word. Now, probably the best thing I would say, visual-wise, and just on some epic shit, was the scene on the bridge of Dragonstone. Basically, H-Town and his warriors with the king's people roll up. Day comes down with the egg, rolls up. And they basically saying, look, you need to surrender the egg. You need to surrender Dragonstone in order the king. And Damon's like, fuck you. He's like, you ain't the king. You the king's right hand. Where is my brother anyway? And then H-Town's like, you trying to marry a whore? You ain't shit. That bitch ain't shit. Your baby ain't gonna be shit. That's what he said. Ain't nobody in your family. You white. You twisted. Your girl's a hoe. You broke. Kid ain't yours, and everybody know. Your old man say you stupid. You be like, so I love my baby mother. I never let her go. So basically, H-Town was on there talking cash shit until fucking Syraxis shows up. Damon's dragon comes out. Whoosh. All red, lay down, sit down behind him, and he look at him like, what you want to do? And Day sitting there with his knife out like, what you want to do? What you want to do? You know what I'm saying? So H-Town scared as hell, like, oh shit, he tell all the men, put the swords up, because we do not want to get burnt and ate the fuck up by this dragon. Then out of nowhere, you hear a rumbling, and you hear little dragon sounds. Ray comes up, swoops in with Syrax, lands behind H-Town and the dudes, kind of even the odds with the dragons, and she gets off and walks through the motherfuckers down, bowing and shit. H-Town talking about, Sir Christian Knight, take her back to the kingdom with her daddy and protect her. She like, get out of my way, because she was like, Syrax gets mad if people provoke me, okay? So she goes, talks to her uncle, and she like, look, basically, I'm the only thing in your way, because I'm the next heir to the Iron Throne, so kill me, uncle. We can set this shit off with the dragons. You can kill me right now. What do you want to do? And she was very smart because she retrieved the egg. Damon threw the egg out like, fuck you. Even though he cared for his niece. That was the only person that could probably stop him from going ham and had a little reason, which was a great scene. But basically threw the egg back and was like, look, I ain't gonna kill my niece. You know what I'm saying? And that was cool too. But she got the egg back from her uncle. He still has feelings for her. And Day he has a couple soft spots. He got a soft spot for his whore bitch, and he got one for his niece so far. So that was a good scene, y'all. I thought the dragons might have did something now, but what that scene did, it perfectly set up the War of the Dragons, the Dance of the Dragons, what we're going to see. and it's almost just a good intro because you know it's about to go down. I like seeing those two dragons. I think, of course, Damon's dragon's older because he's older than his niece, which makes sense. And I don't think Cyrax is finished growing, but when these dragons get down, it's going to be bloody. It's going to be trouble, trouble, like Bernie Mac said. Now, the king's advisors advise him his best choice for a new wife would be to choose Lord Corlys's daughter, the 12-year-old. They was trying to say, look, she will mature in a few years, but he had a good point. He was like, she's 12. But you got to understand, she got that pure Valyrian blood. They keep talking about the purity of this Valyrian blood. And I'm glad they keep bringing this up because it is a big deal. She also, through her mother, has Targaryen blood. You know, back then they, and still now, if you really want to get into it, they believe in keeping the bloodlines pure. And not having it diluted with any outside blood. That's why a lot of the times these motherfuckers married their siblings and family members. Gross as hell, I don't think it's right, but that's the reasoning that they did it. So it all boils down this episode to who is the king going to choose. And right when he's about to make the announcement, they at the little meeting with everybody. Laura C is there, Ray Ray's there, everybody's there. Hightower, they even have Hightower's daughter there. He ends up choosing Allie as his wife. Laura C is not having that shit. Storms out. Ray Ray's pissed too because they looking at her like, how you gonna be marry my bestie and not even tell me? And how you gonna be my bestie and be trying to sleep with my dad and marry him? Like, that was some fucked up shit. So I think that's where the first rift, and maybe the biggest rift, is gonna come between them. Childhood friends that grew up together. Allie and Ray Ray grew up together, and they not gonna be friends no more after this shit. So we fast forward, we see Laura C talking about the bloodlines and going over history and shit. You can see he's made a pact with Day. Now, Damon's gonna make the deal with him, but he also said, keep my brother's name out of your mouth. He still somewhat cares about his family right now. They not 100% at each other's throat, but they are doing little things to provoke each other. And they make a pact. Basically, what they're going to do is they're going to take out the Crab King themselves, claim all the glory, and then basically come back to the throne and be like, you ain't doing your motherfucking job. So this episode was great, and it sets up the entire show. The standoff of the dragons, the standoff of the brothers, the standoff between Damon and H-Town, the standoff that's going to soon come up between goddamn Ray Ray and Allie. It's about to go down. So House of the Dragon, I'm looking forward to this. This is something I will continue reviewing weekly. And like I said, I just binged Game of Thrones in December. Not even 8-9 months ago. So the show's fresh in my head. I love the lore. I love the characters. I love the music. I love the dragons. I love the goddamn gore. So don't forget to like and subscribe. Peace.